Ready for a little escape?
Always. Where are we headed this time?
Well, how about a trip to Kofu?
Kofu.
Yeah, it's this really tiny town in the mountains of Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we're going to be diving into a YouTube video all about it. They've
Cool.
got stunning scenery, a super tight-knit community,
I like the sound of that already.
and they're tackling rural decline in some really interesting ways.
That's something a lot of places are struggling with, not just in Japan, right?
Exactly. That's what makes Kofu's story so fascinating. It's like this little microcosm of what's happening in rural areas all over the world.
I see. So what are they doing differently in Kofu?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was just how involved the community was, even in the making of this video.
Oh,
Yeah, the creator's sister-in-law actually helped him connect with all the residents, like everyone knows everyone there.
that's amazing. It really adds a personal touch, you know? You can feel that sense of community right from the start.
Absolutely, and you really get a sense of that connection to the community when you see where Kofu's located.
Okay, so where is it?
So it's practically in the shadow of Mount Daisen.
Mount Daisen.
Yeah, it's this majestic peak, and it really shapes not just the landscape, but like the whole way of life in Kofu.
I bet. When you have a landmark like that, it's bound to influence everything around it.
Totally. And you see it everywhere, from the Suntory water factory to the hydroelectric dams,
Makes sense they'd want to harness all those natural resources.
right? And get this, they even have this crazy network of channels built to control erosion from the mountain.
Wow, that's dedication. But it also kind of makes them vulnerable, right?
Yeah, I mean, if anything happened to Mount Daisen, like a natural disaster, it would be devastating.
It's a reminder of that balance, how these communities rely on nature, but they're also at its mercy.
Definitely. And you see that connection to nature reflected in their housing as well.
Their housing, what do you mean?
So instead of like isolated farmhouses that you might see in other rural areas, the homes in Kofu are all grouped together in these tight-knit clusters, surrounded by fields that they all own collectively.
Oh, interesting. Is there a term for that?
Yeah, the video creator called it the cluster system. Japanese term is shuraku, I think.
Churaku. I like that. It sounds cozy. But, I guess there are pros and cons to living that close to your neighbors, huh?
For sure. I mean, on the one hand, you have this incredible sense of community, right? Like everyone's always there to help each other out.
Yeah, I can see that. But on the other hand, not a lot of privacy, I imagine.
That's true, but it seems like they've found ways to adapt. Like they have this mobile grocery store.
A mobile grocery store, how does that work?
It basically drives around to each of these clusters, bringing fresh food right to people's doorsteps.
That's so cool. I bet the older residents especially appreciate that.
Definitely. And it's a great example of how they're using innovation to address the challenges of rural decline.
Absolutely. Speaking of innovation, did you see what they did with the closed schools?
Yeah, that was amazing. Turning them into a coffee roaster and a BMX park, who would have thought?
Right. It's such a smart way to repurpose those spaces and breathe new life into the town.
And it seems like it's not just a local effort. The new school they built was actually partly funded by a national grant specifically for rural revitalization.
Oh, wow. So the government's really getting involved in these efforts.
Yeah, it's called the Furusato Susei program.
Furusato Susei. Interesting.
Yeah, it seems like they're really trying to make rural areas more attractive and, help them thrive.
Makes sense. A lot of countries are facing similar challenges with people moving to cities and rural areas struggling to keep up.
Exactly, and Kofu is definitely coming up with some creative solutions. Even their transportation system is unique.
Oh, what's so special about it?
Well, get this. The same person drives both the school buses and the taxis.
Really? Wow, that's efficient, I guess.
Talk about a multitasker, right? But it also shows how close-knit the community is.
Yeah, you got to trust someone a lot to let them drive your kids to school and then pick you up for a ride later.
And speaking of attracting new residents, they have this whole relocation program with all these incentives.
Okay, like what?
They're offering subsidies to help people move, affordable housing options, and they even have this trial home where you can, like, test out life in Kofu for 3 months before you commit.
Wow, that's amazing. It shows they're really serious about bringing in new people.
And it's not just talk. The relocation team the video creator met with, they were all immigrants to Kofu themselves.
Oh, wow. That's pretty powerful. They're walking the walk, huh?
For sure, and it just adds to that feeling that Kofu is a really special place.
You've definitely piqued my curiosity. What else did you find interesting about Kofu?
Well, what really struck me was, even though they're not really focused on tourism, there's this undeniable charm to the town.
It sounds like a hidden gem.
Absolutely. I mean, the scenery is breathtaking, the community is so welcoming, and they're just doing things differently.
It's inspiring to see a place like that, a place that's embracing its challenges and forging its own path.
Definitely. So, are you ready to dig a little deeper into Kofu's story?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
It's amazing how they took something like those closed schools, which could have been like a real downer, and turned them into something positive.
It's like they took a potential problem and flipped it on its head, turned it into an opportunity.
Exactly. Like that BMX park in the old gym, that's genius.
Right. It gives kids something to do, keeps them active, and it's probably a big draw for families thinking about moving there.
It definitely gives Kofu a different vibe,
Mm.
not just a place that's fading away, but one that's like reinventing itself.
Adapting to the times, finding new ways to make things work.
And that relocation program is a big part of that too, right? I mean, offering all those incentives, that's got to be expensive.
Yeah. Well, remember that grant program we talked about, the Furusato Suse? That's helping to cover some of the costs.
Right, but that's not going to last forever.
True. They'll have to find a way to make it sustainable in the long run.
It's like they're planting seeds, hoping they'll grow into something that can support itself.
Exactly. And hopefully attract even more people to Kofu so it becomes this self-sustaining cycle.
It makes you wonder, like, what's the overall economic picture in Kofu? The video mentioned the Suntory factory and those hydroelectric dams, but what else is going on there?
Yeah, that's a bit of a mystery, isn't it? They didn't go into too much detail about the local economy.
Maybe they're tapping into the whole remote work trend, attracting people who can work from anywhere.
That's a good point. With those beautiful surroundings, I bet a lot of people would love to set up shop there.
Or maybe they're focusing on things like local crafts or agritourism, playing up their unique character.
And don't forget about the potential for ecotourism with Mount Dason right there. They've got a built-in attraction for nature lovers.
It's fun to imagine all the possibilities. But even without knowing all the details, it's clear they're not just relying on old industries, they're trying new things.
And even though the video didn't focus on it too much, agriculture must still play a role, right? We saw glimpses of rice paddies and fields.
Absolutely, you can't escape that connection to the land, especially in a place like Kofu.
And it ties back to that mobile grocery store, too, supporting local farmers and providing fresh food to the community.
It's such a simple idea, but so effective. Makes me wonder if they have other initiatives like that, maybe farmers markets or community gardens.
I bet they do. It seems like they're all about strengthening those local connections between people and the food they eat.
It's like they're weaving this intricate web connected to the community, the environment, and the economy.
And that connection to nature, that's got to be a huge draw for people, too, right? The video really captured the beauty of the place.
Oh yeah, those stunning landscapes, the peaceful atmosphere, it definitely makes you want to pack your bags and go.
It's a reminder that there's more to life than just hustle and bustle, that sometimes it's about slowing down and appreciating the simple things.
But let's be real, no place is perfect. What are some of the potential downsides to Kofu's approach? What are they not telling us?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is the risk of becoming too dependent on outside funding, like those government grants.
Sort of balancing act, right? Using those resources to get things started, but also building something that can stand on its own 2 feet.
Exactly. They need to make sure they're not just creating a temporary fix, but a sustainable future.
And what about the whole close-knit community thing? Could that ever be a negative?
Hmm. That's an interesting point. I mean, on the one hand, it's great to have that support system, but on the other hand, I could see how it might feel a little stifling for some people.
Like everyone's in your business all the time.
Yeah, or maybe there's pressure to conform, to do things a certain way.
So it's a trade-off, like anything else.
Hmm.
But overall, it seems like they're doing a pretty good job of navigating these challenges.
Absolutely. They're definitely a model for other rural communities to learn from, even if they have to adapt things to fit their own situation.
Kofu's story is a real reminder that there's hope for rural areas, that they don't have to just fade away.
It's about finding your strengths, being creative, and working together to build a better future.
And speaking of building a better future, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned from Kofu so far.
We've seen how they're tackling rural decline, their unique approach to housing and community, and their deep connection to nature.
We've also talked about the potential challenges they face, like finding long-term economic solutions and maintaining their identity as they grow.
But before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay, hit me with it.
What aspects of Kofu's story resonated most with you? And what lessons, if any, could you apply to your own community, even if it's completely different from rural Japan? We'll be back in a moment to explore those ideas further and bring our deep dive to a close.
It's pretty amazing how Kofu has managed to, like, buck the trend.
Yeah.
So many rural areas are struggling, but they seem to be thriving.
It's inspiring, isn't it? It shows that it's possible to create a positive future, even when things seem stacked against you.
Before the break, we asked you to think about uh, what parts of Kofu's story really stood out to you. Was it their strong community, their innovative solutions?
Or maybe it was that deep connection to nature that just shines through in the video.
Whatever it was, I think there's a lot we can all learn from Kofu, no matter where we live or what challenges we face.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that every community has its own unique strengths, and sometimes it just takes a little creativity to unlock them.
Like Kofu didn't try to become some big city. They embraced their rural character.
Yeah.
They focused on what made them special,
Exactly. And instead of shying away from challenges, they tackled them head on with this, like, can-do spirit.
like turning those closed schools into community centers. That was brilliant.
And who could forget the single driver for the school buses, Andy the taxis? Talk about efficiency.
It's clear that Kofu isn't afraid to think outside the box, to come up with unconventional solutions.
And they understand that attracting new residents is crucial for long-term growth. That relocation program is a pretty bold move.
It shows that they're not just like sitting back and hoping to the best. They're actively taking steps to build their future.
But it's not just about bringing people in, it's about creating a place where they can truly belong, right?
Yeah, a place where they feel connected, supported, part of something bigger than themselves.
And Kofu has done an amazing job of fostering that sense of community through things like those repurposed schools, the mobile grocery store, and just that overall welcoming atmosphere.
Kofu's story is a powerful reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to revitalizing rural areas.
It's about finding what works for your community, understanding your unique assets, and being willing to experiment and adapt.
It's also about fostering a sense of hope, a belief that things can get better, that positive change is possible.
And I think that's a message we could all use a little more of these days.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Kofu, I want to encourage you to think about what you've learned.
What resonated with you? What sparked your imagination?
What can you take away from this story and apply to your own life, your own community, your own corner of the world?
Because Kofu has shown us that even small towns, in seemingly far-off places, can offer valuable lessons for all of us.
They've shown us that community, connection, and a little bit of ingenuity can go a long way in creating a brighter future.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the stories that matter.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure to Kofu. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.